I'm not going to necessarily recommend this one. It is the heaviest, saddest book I've ever read in my life. Hello bookish besties, welcome to my channel or welcome back. We are officially through the first quarter of the year. I feel like we're still in January, honestly. So my plan for this year is to pick my top 5 reads of each quarter, and then at the end of the year we will compile all of those books from each quarter, and I'll probably pick my top 5 favorite reads of the year. So these books aren't in any order, it's just my top 5 favorite reads of quarter 1. So we're gonna start with book 1. This is a book that I just finished. Some of my reactions are in my realistic reading week, so that is Brutal Prince. For those of you that don't know what it is a mafia romance between the Irish and the Italian mafia. It's a series. This book is Callum and Ada. They are forced to get married because of kind of like a fight slash something that happened between the two families. So they are forced to marry in order to secure Callum a good political position in Chicago. It just kind of, the story unravels from there. We get to meet each of the siblings, and each of the siblings does have a book. So I'm very excited to continue on with this series. I loved Callum in this. He was broody and snarky and kind of cold, but he lit up for Ada. And Ada was definitely a badass. You can tell she was raised with only brothers, and I thought a lot of the references to her mother were so sweet. I think the strawberries on the front of the cover are so funny once you actually get to reading the book. It is like a little inside reference kind of thing. This book is mildly spice heavy. Spice is very good in this book. There are a few different subplots that add stakes and that keep kind of like the underlying plot going. So it's not only their romance that's keeping the story going, and it kind of sets stuff up with the Polish mafia, and Nessa is in the next book, and I think she gets kidnapped by the Polish mafia. So it just kind of sets everything up for the next book as well. But I definitely recommend this if you are in the mood for a really fast-paced, really short, kind of dark romance, more mafia romance in general. But I do recommend this. It's very good, and I'm really excited to continue the series. On to probably one of my favorite books of all time. This is not the first time I've read this book, but I did reread it in the first quarter, so I am counting it because I don't want to stop recommending this, and I don't ever want to stop talking about it. So the first time I read this, it was physical, and then the second time I reread this, it was audiobook, and I highly recommend both formats. They were both so amazing. This is the first book I read by this author, but not the only one. I love Daisy Jones and the Six. I love rock and roll. The 70s vibes are so my thing, and this story is just amazing. So it is based off of Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. So basically there's this band, the Six, and they have to team up with Daisy Jones, and she kind of falls in love with the main guy in that band, but he has a wife, and it's just the drama of why the band broke up. So this is written in interview format, so we get each person like their little blurbs, and we just get everybody's viewpoint of what happened, and everybody sees things so differently, and you really see that in this book. Like Daisy could perceive something one way, and then Billy would perceive it like a completely different way, and we get to see that in this since we get the multiple perspectives. And then at the end you figure out who's doing this interview, and it's kind of like a nice little twist kind of thing. But yeah, you basically go through the creation of the Six, who Daisy Jones is and her background, and then you go into Daisy Jones and the Six, them together, touring, all of that. And then obviously they inevitably break up, and we get kind of like why that happened and then what they all kind of went on to do afterwards. And it just, the fact that like I feel like this band is real is kind of insane. I normally don't like historical fiction, and that's what this is. Taylor Jenkins Reid does such a good job with it that I was obsessed and I couldn't stop reading this. And then when they came out with the actual album on Spotify from the TV show, I was hooked. I'm like, this is a real band, these are real people, Daisy Jones is a real person, and you're not going to tell me otherwise. This is like a serious form of escapism, and like, I'm like, when can I go see this band perform in real life? So it's kind of not good, but I have not finished the TV show yet, but it's really good. It's a little different from the book, but adaptations always are a little different. This was so good. The adaptation's really good, and the music is amazing. So I do highly recommend this one, especially if you love like a nitty-gritty kind of gossipy story, if you love the 70s vibe, and if you love rock and roll music. So one of my favorite books of all time. The other book I read by Taylor Jenkins Reid was Carrie Soto's Back, and that's also an amazing book. And I don't know anything about tennis, and I was eating it up. The next book, you guys are gonna laugh and tell me to shut up about this book because I've talked about this book in so many different videos just this year. I bet you can guess what it is. It's Pucking Around. I'm so sorry, but this was my first hockey romance, so I think I'm just attached to it. And also, I am just obsessed with these characters. Rachel, Caleb, Jake, Ilmari, they're some of my favorite characters of like any book series ever. They have a special place in my heart, especially Ilmari. I love that he's like the big broody goalie, but he loves all of his found family. So yeah, I've talked about it before, but in this, Rachel Price, she is a physical therapist and a doctor. She goes to do a fellowship for the Jacksonville Rays, which is Florida's new hockey team, and she finds the guy that she had a one-night stand with in Seattle, which is Jake. And then she winds up falling in love all over again with Jake, Caleb, and Ilmari, and it is found family. It is super spicy, so please check the trigger warnings, or if you're not in the mood for spice, don't read this book. But there's so much plot. Like I said, found family. I love every single one of these characters. And I'm going to, like I said, Sinners and Stardust in August, and one of the vendors that's going is going to have character cards of these characters, and I am like jumping for joy because of that. So I'm so excited. If you like hockey and romance, please read this. Even if you don't, please read this. I'm telling you. It flew by, and it is such a long book. It's worth every single page, and it has such a special place in my heart, so please read this. And this is another one that I've talked about before. I'm not going to necessarily recommend this one. Like I've said time and time again with this one, it is the heaviest, saddest book I've ever read in my life. I feel like I know these characters, and I feel like these characters are real. You have to be in the most mentally well state that you can possibly think of in order to read this. Please check the trigger warnings. There are so many, but you guys probably can guess. It's A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Like I said, this is one of the best written books that I've ever read. The language is beautiful, it's flowy, it's eloquent, it is just downright gorgeous. And I will never forget this book for as long as I live. It changed me. It made me see life differently. It makes you look at people differently and just wonder what the heck they're going through, what the heck they've gone through. Jude, you can't convince me Jude is not a real person. This makes my heart hurt. I just want to take Jude and hug him. Like I said, please check the trigger warnings. If you do want to read this, the audiobook is amazing. You will fly through the actual paperback. Like I said, I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying it is one of the best books I've ever read. It is kind of trauma dumpy, but it doesn't do it in like a ridiculous way. It's just that these characters all went through so much trauma. It's just how it is, how the story goes. This book isn't all sad. There are happy times in it. A lot of it's really sad, and a lot of it's really hard to read. So again, if you do want to read this and you're really curious, because I saw a reading vlog on it and I was like, well, let me pick this up. If you have to put it down and like take time away from it, please do that for your mental health. But like I said, if you're gonna read this, please make sure you're in the right mental state. It is one of my favorite books of the quarter. On to a little bit lighter, not really lighter. It's kind of just a chaotic romance. I flew through it. It was my first read of the year. It is Butcher and Blackbird. I don't think I can recommend this book enough, especially if you're into like thrillers and serial killers and true crime, murder mysteries, all of that. It is about two serial killers that fall in love. They have a competition every year, basically to see who can find and kill the chosen serial killer of the year first. It's basically just a ploy for Rowan to see Sloane every year. It has some of the best banter and some of the best friends to lovers that I have ever seen. I normally don't like friends to lovers. I'm a very big enemies to lovers gal, but this is friends to lovers, and it was so sweet. The banter's so good. It is so graphic and gory, so again, if you don't like that stuff, please don't read this. Check the trigger warnings. There are some inside things that you get to be in on this, but again, please don't read this if you don't want to. I am meeting Brynn Weaver in August at the book convention I'm going to. I cannot wait to meet her and get this signed. Leather and Lark is coming out, I think, in June, and that is her best friend and Rowan's brother. and I cannot wait. Yeah, if you want a really unhinged, kind of spicy book, then pick this one up. The spice doesn't happen until like probably 75% of the way through the book, so not too spicy, but there is a really good twist in this, and like I said, the ending, it's just so funny because like they're very like gritty, gory people. Obviously they are serial killers, so there's a lot of just like funny references and stuff in this, and you know, quirky things that only someone that would like murder would like. So yeah, this is also one of my favorite reads of Q1.